Hi. So this one is a spin-off of the dress lander from the previous video, and this one is going to Eeloo. So obviously it has more boosters, 6 instead of 4, because its mass is somewhat bigger, so that it can support the higher delta V requirements of going to Eeloo. Otherwise, it's basically the same. The lander got souped up a little bit, somewhat more fuel, but basically the same stuff. Yeah, I turned off the engineer because I left it on previously from the testing, but it was not needed here. Yes, taking this to orbit is very similar to the other one. Just here, because we are in the light, we can see how the boosters detached and some of them exploded as they collided with each other. It's somewhat easier to take this into orbit than the other one because of the 6 boosters. A single mainsail does the same job than with the dress craft. And going to Eeloo is even more difficult. Much higher delta V requirements, and this single engine has very little thrust to weight ratio, so I had a lot of problems getting there, especially with the moon there getting in my way. Yeah, it was in this one, not in the previous one. It's because I did these 2 videos in the same day, so I got confused somewhat. But anyway, I had to avoid the moon and still have me in the launch window, and more or less I could do it. Basically, I was really lucky because I didn't need to play around much with the maneuver node, but with a tiny modification, I was right on track. So my idea was that I will discard these 4 external tanks as while braking around or towards Eeloo. The thing is, what happened that so the it took the same way as previously. I was keeping the keeping my altitude actually a little bit lower than the surface, but keeping it with the HUD. So I was just braking and braking, but what happened when I ran out of fuel in the external tanks and detached them? They didn't float away nicely, but exploded, and this explosion sent them flying away. Normally they would have crashed into the surface because they just float away very gently, but as they exploded, they flew away, and some of them didn't hit the surface, so they became space debris. And this is not the desired outcome. Here it was. Normally they don't do that. And I did the remaining braking very close to the surface. I didn't have any specific target here, so I could relatively fast detach the lander and just land anywhere. My goal basically was to get to one of those brownish areas because those are very smooth lowlands and very easy to land on. And yes, Eeloo is, if possible, even more boring than the rest. This is the reason why I was there only once. The same way as dress, I visited it only once before. There was something with the frame rate just before landing, so it was quite annoying. But I landed at the edge of the brown and white areas. The same way, got out the guys and plant the flag and so on, just for the sake of the video. Well, sun was exactly overhead, so I couldn't get a nice view of them. So after this, I waited until I got into position again. So that it would be easier to dock. Here I didn't need to take into account walls of a canyon, because there was no canyon, so it was much easier to go back to orbit. Of course, the higher inclination of the orbit this time made it somewhat harder to make the rendezvous, but it was somehow lucky. So I was lucky with my timing, and I didn't need to do a lot of maneuvering. Quite easily got my rendezvous with the orbiting cruise stage. And of course, this is all the same as we have seen in other videos. Just now it's completely dark, so it was a bit harder, but I'm accustomed to this. Most of my dockings are in dark, because why not? Somehow the timing is always so that I cannot see anything. It was the same as previously. I had to detach the landing stage to get access to the docking port, but it's not a hard thing to do with this limited battery and RCS capability. It's even a lot. It's actually easy to do it even this way. So after this, this had to go back. Found a kind of lucky position. I didn't need to change much of my inclination. I could hit Carbon easily. Of course, that meant that I will be coming in with a very high inclination, and that would be hard to correct this. Actually, I couldn't correct it. It took so long. This game really needs one more step in the this time acceleration modes. Takes literal minutes to get into the orbit of Juna. So finally I was there. Tried to correct it somewhat to a somewhat saner orbit, but actually probably this was an error. With a polar orbit I could have landed easily very close to the space center. Here is error capture, even more severe than the previous one with dress. And there was this remnant very high inclination orbit, and I did have a lot of fuel, but I didn't want to correct this. I thought I would try a very high inclination landing. I knew that I would get the landing timing so that it will be night, and that is problematic because I cannot see anything to judge distances. And it that didn't go very well. Of course, I landed safely, just not very close to the space center, much to the north and probably somewhat to the east. I'm not even sure that I was on the same continent. The touching kind of waste of fuel because uh, it had a lot of fuel in it. I was too conservative with the design in this one, so it had a lot of fuel. So you can see that I'm much north side than I should have been. And thanks for watching. Bye.